At first I couldn't go into a shop, not in a big shop, it's a supermarket, because everything was like zooming down on me. You do probably have a few sleepless nights and that, because you're used to a prison cell, then you've got a bed, a proper bed to sleep in and that, you know.
Released a year ago after spending 20 of the last 30 years in prison, Joe, not his real name, is a man who's learned not to look vulnerable. He says he needed time to learn to live on the outside again, but he's being forced to move out of his room at the end of the week.
So where are you left now once this place is closed?
Well, at the moment, I'll choose my words here and that, in a very dark place, let's put it that way.
He's been staying in a house run by a charity which takes in the most serious offenders. Joe in some ways is lucky. He has some savings, but so far has been unable to find anywhere else to live. Private landlords rarely rent to ex-prisoners, let alone ex-prisoners on universal credit.
For other prisoners that you know who do come out and they have to face the world again by themselves, essentially, how difficult do you think it is not to have somewhere like this?
Very, very difficult indeed. And lots of them do turn to crime again. They'll be a menace to the public and that. This is what will happen in that. Yeah.
Around 2,000 former prisoners have passed through the project run by the charity Change, Grow, Live in the 42 years since it's been set up. CGL provides a bridge between life on the inside and life outside for some of the most serious long-term offenders in the country. But the project is closing on Friday. At its most basic, the ultimate aim is to stop prison leavers reoffending. But those who've lived here say it does much more. This man, we've changed his voice to protect his identity, moved out last month.
Do you think it saved your life?
Oh yes, I'll be honest, I've had suicide attempts in my life before. They need these special units for certain prisoners, and if you put a mental health person in a hostel where there are 25 or 28 druggies or alcoholics or violent people, they're going to struggle. If I was coming out of prison now, I would fear for my life.
2/3 of the men who come through the project go on to live independently. A third are recalled to prison, often a result of staff monitoring their behaviour.
Do we know where he is, where he's gone?
Yeah, back to custody.
It's been funded by West Sussex County Council since 2003, but budget cuts meant they could no longer afford to continue. And for the last 4 months, CGL has funded the project itself. It will be replaced by a patchwork of different services, including offering prison leavers 84 nights accommodation before they have to find their own place.
I think it's a quick fix. I think it looks great on paper, but I think the long-term impact will be a lot of people presenting as street homeless or going back to custody.
You are trying to prevent them, obviously, from reoffending, but at the same time being acutely aware that it's a possibility.
So we're kind of constantly checking their behaviour, we're constantly having reviews, we're constantly feeding information to probation and the police. There is also an element of monitoring, so we will be doing room searches, watching CCTV. So there's a staff presence in each house, so just by nature of us being here, we pick up on the sort of subtle changes in someone's behaviour that might indicate an increase in risk.
What do you fear will happen to some of the people who will come out of prison and not have a facility like this?
I just think they'll flounder and they'll really struggle. You know, I know that we've helped hundreds, if not thousands of men.
These are people who have carried out very serious crimes. The public are not always sympathetic to them. Why do you think it's important that services like this exist for them?
There's no getting away from the fact that the service users we support have committed really serious offences that will have lifelong impacts to the victims and their families. But if we don't start seeing them as human beings and wanting them to have a good offence-free life and supporting them to do that, then what's going to happen is they're going to continue to reoffend and create more victims and cause more harm to the public.
A year in CGL is £18,344. A year in prison is £44,000. Today, the Ministry of Justice said basic temporary accommodation will be provided to keep prison leavers off the streets to stop reoffending. They say 140 councils will be given a share of £13 million to help get ex-offenders into longer-term housing and that they have invested £200 million in rehabilitation services and recruited 2,500 extra probation officers. But staff here say prison leavers will no longer get the same level of scrutiny and that the public may still be at risk. Joe may now have a sense of freedom, but he still doesn't have a permanent place to live, and nor do several other men currently being housed by CGL. The future is even less certain for men leaving prison over the coming weeks and months.
Well, earlier I spoke to the Prisons and Probation Minister, Alex Chalk, and I began by asking him if he regretted the closing of the Change, Grow, Live project.
Well, I think the work that's been done with Change, Grow, Live is something that we want to build on. And indeed, we are in very, very dramatic fashion. So Change, Grow, Live help at any one time between 30 and 40. That's really important. We are going to be helping over 3,000 prison leavers a year and making sure they don't go into homelessness. Because with this £20 million, we will guarantee 12 weeks of accommodation. Now, that period provides the stability so that that offender can get the chance to address all the other myriad aspects in their life that need fixing. But what you really need as well is the staff to really work with that offender and put them on a straight track. And that's why we're recruiting a record number of probation officers. It'll be 8,000 last year. We recruited 1,000 last year, average about a 600. And it'll be 1,500 next year. So very significant uplift in the amount of recruitment.
With all those extra probation officers, though, does that restore the numbers cut since 2010 or not?
No, this is a dramatic increase in our investment in probation. So we're putting in around £300 million because we know if you can bring the workload down of individual probation officers, you give them more bandwidth, if you like, to actually provide that really detailed management of those individuals. Working together with those, we've done a homelessness prevention task force, which are probation officers working in custody with those offenders as well, so that they get support in custody, they get support when they come out of custody into this 12-week accommodation.
So 16,000 probation officers once you've hired these extra ones, but how many were there in 2010?
Well, look, I don't know. I wasn't in Parliament in 2010, but what I can tell you is this, is that the initiative that we're providing now is genuinely groundbreaking. It wasn't going on in 2010, it wasn't going on in 2005. And this is a step change.
The Ministry of Justice has seen spending cut by 25% since 2010. And you're telling me you don't know whether the probation officers are whether there's more or fewer probation officers now than in 2010. I just wonder why you hadn't asked.
So it was the case, you're right, that after 2010 spending was reduced. That's absolutely correct. But over recent years, spending has increased really quite significantly, but going into local authorities as well. So it's not just, by the way, probation, but also local authorities themselves can team up with probation to assist individuals to turn their lives around.
Boris Johnson announced yesterday an expansion of electronic tagging for burglars. What evidence do you have that that is effective?
Well, look, the business about the electronic tagging is that this meant for those who are guilty of acquisitive offences, so you're right, burglars are one, but you could also be robbers or thieves as well, this is about, on the one hand, making sure that those individuals who come out of custody know that if they were minded to slip back into their old ways, and we hope that the support they're given means that they don't do that, but if they're minded to do that, that tag means that the police are likely to catch up with them. The point is, people will respond to incentives and people respond to boundaries, so to speak. So that if you are somebody who is emerging from custody and wants to turn their life around, this provides a daily reminder that when they might be tempted, for example, to mix in the wrong crowd or to get involved in the wrong activities, that this is something that may well lead to them being caught and sent back to custody. Now, I think that we should try to find the treasure in the heart of every man, as Winston Churchill put it. That also means ensuring that those individuals who are tempted to go the wrong way are actually brought back onto the right path. And that's exactly what these tags will do. And they'll do that as a matter of, I'm bound to say, of basic common sense.
Alex Chalk, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.